you guys are ready, I'm going to give a quick countdown for Will for editing purposes and then actually go into the intro. So,
yep, no problems.
If we're ready, that's 3, 2, 1. Hello there, welcome to episode number 8 of the Hit or Miss Doctor Who podcast. I'm your host this week. My name's Mike, as you all probably know by now. Will's left me in charge because, well, he was initially off recording The Chase when we first recorded this. But truth be told, just to give you a little peek behind the curtain of how the sausage is made, pardon the mixed metaphor, this is actually the second time that we've recorded this particular episode. We did record one in its entirety, and because we were using something called CraigBot, which completely gave up, we lost almost all of the episode. But when this goes out, I was able to salvage a very brief half an hour. It's in the middle of the thing, so it would have been useless for most purposes, but I'm going to put it up as an alternate/deleted extended scene on my own personal YouTube channel. So when this episode airs, do head over there. We'll link to it to hear a little bit of what we said the first time we tried this. But without further ado, I'll have to introduce my guests. As I said, Will's not here, so I've been joined by my usual substitute co-host. Was it Andrew Kemp? Andy? Hi.
Hello! Guess who's back? I'm here again. If you hated me the first 2 times, well, you're in luck. Hello.
And we're joined by a very special guest today, a YouTuber, an actor, and an all-round hilarious guy. He's just released a video relatively recently on the legendary or legendarily bad, depending on your point of view, Doctor Who story, Dimensions in Time. He is Adam Martin. Hello, Adam. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Dimensions in Time is canon. I don't care what anyone says. Dimensions in Time is canon. There, I've given my mission statement for the...
I'd also like to give a warm welcome to the 4th and arguably the most important member of the podcast,
yeah.
Mike Soundboard, everybody.
Yes.
It's taken on a life of its own. The sad thing is, it's probably more popular than me at this point. At this point, we could just create an entire second series of just clips from Doctor Who and you cutting to them, Andrew. But we'll maybe leave that one. But yeah, so as I said, Will isn't joining us today. Weirdly enough, he is lurking around the call because I'm using his backup OBS recording abilities, but he is off watching a film, so he won't be joining us or chiming in at all.
Lazy bastard.
Well, he was originally in
Sorry.
This is the adult episode, everyone, being what it is. But yeah, so as I say, he was originally not going to join us because he was off recording The Chase, so we already organised a group of 3. So there we go. And just to clarify that for you, after the last time, Adam, that was his version of The Chase, the game show, not the Doctor Who serial about running around with the Daleks and facing the mechanoids.
Which is a wonderful serial. Like, I'd be interested to sit down with anyone who actively says they hate The Chase, because I'd want to know why. Like, it's just a lot of fun.
It's hard to hate. I mean, I can see where it's a little bit camp and cheesy, but so is a lot of Doctor Who. But I'm also looking forward. Weirdly enough, the first time we recorded this, I mentioned that there was an upcoming episode of Daleks that would feature the mechanoids. And that would have Anjali Mohindra as the voice of the sort of head queen mechanoid.
That's right.
They released a preview trailer for that literally just as we're recording yesterday, which will be like weeks ago when this goes out. But so by now you'll all have seen that, and hopefully the mechanoids will have took their rightful place in pop culture. So,
do you know what? I had a nightmare with that Season 8 Blu-ray announcement. So you might have seen on Twitter, I mean, when we're recording this, I made it today. So they announced the box set at midnight, didn't they? Like midnight of the 25th. So I went to bed being like, right, I'll like that. Yeah, I was like, right, I'll do a news report on it when I get up. So I got up, made my news report. I'm editing, I'm uploading it as we speak. I'm like, right, that's going out at 12. It's now like 11 a.m. And then they dropped the bloody trailer announcing what some of the special features are going to be. So I'm like, right, back to the edit suite. So I very quickly had to like improvise a recording, and it's out there now, but my god, I was like, bloody hell. They're doing this on purpose.
I was expecting it. So as you probably guessed by now, as I said, it'll be old news, but we did just literally get the announcement that the next collection Blu-ray will be Season 8. And yeah, thanks to Adam, I did manage to pre-order it 12 minutes after it was available because he was so on the ball. He tweeted out 12 minutes past midnight. So
I pre-ordered that thing so hard because with the whole collection thing, I came into it, I think, with season 10. So the first 3 releases I had to get on eBay. And I was quite lucky. I didn't have to pay through I think the most I paid was for season 19, the Peter Davison one. I think I paid about £80 for that one. So not triple figures, but still a bit, still a dent in the pocket. And I had to get the season 12 second edition release because, I mean, that thing on eBay, the first edition, you're talking like 200 quid plus. I was like, no, not a chance.
Season 12 was the Tom Baker's first season,
Was, and arguably not the best Tom Baker season. What?
Strongly disagree, but weirdly enough, I got the first release of that, and then I still felt kind of screwed over because I got the release where 2 of the discs had to be replaced. So,
it was the audio issue, wasn't it, or something on the disc?
There was an audio issue, and there was some issues with crediting people incorrectly. So basically, I've got no idea where they are, and I wish I could find them. So I've got spare, slightly off-brand Blu-rays of the Sontaran Experiment and Revenge of the Cybermen, because they didn't tell me to do anything with the old discs. They just sent the replacements through the post. So who knows? But anyway, enough talk of news. We've got a bit of a shorter episode today, probably because Adam has things to do. So we've only got about an hour and a half today, so we're going to try. The hit or miss section, when we get to it, will be cut down from 10, which is the usual, to 5, because we're pressed for time and we all talk too much. But it's literally a fault of all 3 of us, but here, you all enjoy hearing us, so you have no choice. So, so without further ado, I'm going to skip straight onto the On This Day section. Again, we're repeating ourselves from previous, but you, the listener, won't know this, so this will be new to you. And this is for the On This Day when this episode will air, which will be December the 6th. So going straight into it, and again, fellas, just chime in if you want, if there's any thoughts or feelings about this. I've actually got it all written down in neat and who everybody is, though, this time, unlike the last time, so we're good to go. So, first of all, we'll start with birthdays. So, on this day in 1932, the actor Declan Mulholland was born, and he played Clark in The Sea Devils until...
Oh yeah, wasn't he one of the Cylon men, if I remember correctly?
I have no idea. I'm just reading what I wrote down. Somebody called Clark and another guy called Till. It's been a long time since I've seen either of these stories, if I'm honest, so it could be anything.
I actually really like The Sea Devils.
Yeah, it's been a while. I need to give it a rewatch, and hopefully, if the Blu-ray sets keep coming out, I will do. Anyway, moving on. On this day in 1938, the actor Colin Farrell was born. Interesting fact about this guy, who I said, presumably his name isn't Colin Farrell. Turns out it absolutely is. That's obviously why he goes by Col, because it's not the Colin Farrell from some movies. It's an actor who we all would probably know has become famous as a meme this year for playing Benny in Orphan 55. Benny! Benny, happy birthday, mate! And on this day in 1957, actress Arabella Weir was born. She played an unbound version of the Doctor and was Billis in The Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe. And yeah, we did briefly get into a discussion last time about how all of the Matt Smith Christmas specials are great. That's definitely what we said. We said not one of the 4 was bad, and we're moving straight on from that.
I feel like I've had words put in my mouth here, and I don't like it.
No, I think we established that I liked all 4, and I think you guys probably had one that you didn't like as much as the others, at least. So.
Yeah, I think Christmas Carol is phenomenal. I think Dr. Widow and the Wardrobe can burn in hell. I actually really like The Snowman, and Time with the Doctor is fine.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I think, I've got a particular affinity with the Tennant Christmas specials because that's mainly what I grew up with. But I sort of like I prefer ones that aren't necessarily focused all around Christmas. So, like, Twice Upon a Time, sure, that's set at Christmas, but it's not. Yeah. You could argue it's not about Christmas. Nothing wrong with Christmassy ones. I don't know. I just like it when it's more of a story, rather than this is the most Christmassy thing ever. But that's just my opinion.
I'd say Christmas Carol fits that. Like, it's set at Christmas, and it is a very Christmassy feeling, but there is a full plot to it. It's not just Christmas.
Fair enough. Yeah, well, as I said, I like golf, so we'll move on and say on this day in 1962, the actor Colin Salmon was born, who's most famous in Doctor Who circles for playing Dr. Moon from Silence of the Library and Forest of the Dead. And
Phenomenal two-parter.
Absolutely. And did you guys hear the this sort of idea that was floating around that Moffat and Stephen Moffat and Russell T Davies have decided that that's a future, possibly final incarnation of the Doctor?
Yes, I did. Yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about, isn't it?
It really is. It's a cool idea that he's basically sort of ending up with River because, there's such an importance to that character, I think, despite her kind of messed up timeline and everything. But yeah.
Or maybe he's a pre-Hartnell Doctor.
Oh, the meme begins again.
all the NMDs just tuned out, Andy. Damn it!
No. Do you guys follow the Twitter account? Your favour's a pre-Hartnell Doctor.
Yes,
I don't follow it, but I've seen it.
Oh, I love it. I think it's really funny.
Oh, my apologies. Yeah, I follow all the spin-off accounts as well. Like, your favourite is a I can't remember the actors' names, but a pre-ex Barusa and a pre-ex meddling monk, a pre-Butterworth meddling monk, and etc. So, yeah.
The only thing I'll say on all that is I saw on Doctor Who Day those in that camp, shall we say, tweeting out with the hashtag Hartnell first, and I was just like, get over yourself. But yeah, that's all I'm going to say on that.
Let's move on from that. But I will give a quick shout out to something Adam brought my attention to, which is that there's a series of 10th Doctor and River Song Big Finish adventures coming up. We're not 100% sure where that fits into the timeline, but it is coming. So
yeah, I think actually the day we're recording this, I think it's come out today. So if you're listening a few weeks future, go and check that out. But yeah, I'm just, again, like I say, where the hell does that fit in?
I've got no idea.
We'll just maybe edit this out if it's a bit too controversial. But do you reckon the NMDs have their own rally cry that's just make Gallifrey great again?
Lord, don't give him any ideas.
Yes. I'm not touching that with a 6-foot pole.
Yeah, we'll be wanting presidential style debates next between the two different sides.
I'll never concede. The master was wrong. It was a lie.
Hartnell was the first Doctor, guys. We all know this. Everyone knows.
The best. We're making a wall in front of that incarnation. There's nothing before it. Sorry, you are going to have to edit that out, aren't you, Will? Apologies. But, yeah, we love everybody here on the podcast. We're very inclusive, so welcome. Moving on. On this day in 1975, the actor Noel Clarke was born, who you might know as Mickey Smith, and who we were all incredibly shocked to learn upon hearing this that is 45 years old.
Yeah, he really does not look it at all.
Looking damn good for 45.
He looks phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, shout out to Adam for making me feel terrible by pointing out that next year David Tennant is 50.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Nice, I like it. I see what you did there.
I kind of thought I was waiting for your soundboard, and then I was like, I'm going to step in.
The soundboard only appears in the hit or miss section. I can't give it, otherwise people get sick of it. So yeah, moving on, slightly changing tone a little bit. There's only one sort of sad death on this day, and it was in 2015, and that was the actor Nicholas Smith, who played Wells in the Dalek Invasion of Earth, but is definitely more famous for his role as Mr. Rumbold from Are You Being Served? Which a lot of the listeners may well know. You know, it's another BBC show running for a while, so yeah. So we'll skip straight from that into the things. Well, first of all, I'll say R.I.P. respect, and then we'll skip to the things that aired on this day. So this is December the 6th. In 1975, the Android Invasion Part 3 first aired on BBC One.
Everyone's favourite.
Very middle of the road Tom Baker for me, but fair enough. On this day in 1980, State of Decay Part 3 aired.
Never understood the hype. Never. It's not a bad story, but you need people like, oh my god, State of Decay is the best thing ever, and I'm like, I just don't see it. I don't know what I'm missing.
People that say it's the best story in that season, when, as I said, it has some of my favourite stories at the end in Keeper of Traken and Legopolis. I just do not understand the logic of saying State of Decay is the best thing on there. I mean, it's cheesy fun, but that's a lot like saying, oh, Destiny of the Daleks is the best thing on that season. It's not.
Yeah, but Destiny of the Daleks kind of is the best thing on that season. Sorry.
How very dare you?
I'll quit.
City of Death in it? How could you?
I'm going to say this now. I've never really enjoyed City of Death, and I don't know. I know. I got roasted over someone. I put that on Twitter actually recently, and the first response was that gif from the Simpsons movie. The angry mob with all their torches. And I was like, yeah, it's okay. It's not a bad story. I don't hate it. I just don't. It's those episodes before you watch them and you look at fandom and it's like, oh, this is incredible. That sort of thing. And then you watch it. The best way, I don't see what everyone else is seeing. Let's put it that way. But I think we've all got a story like that, haven't we? That people say is either people say is terrible or people love, and we just feel the opposite.
I think that's the thing. City of Death, I think, is my favourite. I always put it as my number one classic serial. But that's because I hadn't heard anything about it coming into it, and I'm a massive fan of Douglas Adams and his brand of humour and kind of off-kilter stuff. Love The Hitchhiker's Guide and everything as well. But I have stories like that. I mean, it took me a couple of watches before I understood what everyone was on about with Genesis of the Daleks.
Me too.
I still don't think it's like a top 5 story. I mean, there's a lot of padding in there, and then there's ridiculous things like the terrible sort of kids' TV giant clam and stuff. I mean, there's lots of greatness. Don't get me wrong, but you can't say it's flawless. And the one that I still don't, understand that I really have to give a rewatch to is The Caves of Androzani, which I've tried twice and twice.
Mate.
So dull.
Really? Oh, see, that's the one I do lean into. I love Caves of Androzani. I always think it's a good. Me and my ex-partner, when I was with her, she'd not watched any classic Who, and I just said, would you be up for watching one of them, any of them? And she went, yeah. And I was like, well, where the hell do I start? And I don't know. I picked Caves because she's familiar with the whole regeneration thing, and I think Peter Davison's a good doctor to start with, and she loved it. Like, she loved all 4 parts. So from there, I think for me, I've always said that's a good jumping on point.
Yeah.
Just
if I rewatch it, I like it. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, just throwing my 2 cents in for an episode that everyone loves that I think is overhyped for New Who. I don't think the series 4 finale is as good as everyone else makes it out to be. I have been outspoken about this on Twitter. I think Turn Left is phenomenal. I think Stolen Earth is really good, and I don't think Journey's End is bad. But I think there's a lot of, and I guess he can kind of get away with it because it was his final series, so RTD was kind of throwing everything in the kitchen sink in, and it's fun, it's fine. But I also wouldn't put it anywhere near my top 5 finales of New Who at all.
That's fair. I met someone once who had. Sorry, mate. I was just.
No, go ahead.
I met someone who we were just chatting about New Who, and we got to the end of time, the last Tennant one. And up to that point, this was about 3-4 years ago, anyone I talked to about the end of time was like, yeah, fantastic, love it, whatever. And this person was like, I hate the end of time. And I was like, what? And but yeah, it's just fascinating, isn't it? I mean,
I've got some news for you.
Do you hate the end of time?
I hate the end of time. Seriously.
You're not alone, yeah.
My boyfriend and I last year started rewatching Doctor Who to review it. You can see it on our Twitter. And we got to the Waters of Mars at the start of this year, maybe around February, and we haven't touched it since because I hate the end of time so much. I can't bear to put myself through watching both parts, which is sad because then we get into what, in my opinion, is the best series of New Who.
That's fair. Wow. That's fair.
Andy,
sorry, go on.
Could you do me a favour and just turn your volume down a little bit? You're coming through very loud.
I'm so sorry.
He's got to edit. No, it's fine. It's not that you're being loud. I think it's the volume that you have on your computer or whatever is a little bit loud. And I've just got my headphones in my phone. I don't know if I can alter it. I'll just try and speak a bit quieter. You can alter it on Discord. I think maybe or on your actual phone itself. But okay.
I'll have a look.
It's coming through very loud, and I'm aware, like I said, for Will, for editing purposes, he complains about audio levels and anyway.
Yeah. Point is, I hate the end of time. I think it's not awful, but I don't think it's really that good either.
I was surprised to learn how many people do hate it. I don't. I really, really, really like it. But I was surprised to learn there's a huge sort of faction of the Who community who hates it, including all three of the guys on Radio Free Skaro, which is a podcast that I listen to.
Yes, yeah.
They absolutely detest it, and I don't get it. But yeah. Anyway, sorry for that slight digression. We'll move on to the On This Day section. So on this day in 1986... the Ultimate 4 Part 2 aired. Yay, we've finally reached the end of Trial of a Time Lord, which there's been an episode of every episode of this podcast that aired on this day. So we're at the end of that. So yeah, so Adam, what's your favourite line from the Ultimate 4, would you say?
Oh, my favourite. The one where they're like, right, guys, we've got 5 minutes left to wrap up 14 weeks. We haven't got time. We need a script in a day. Do something. And Pip and Jane Baker were like, right, okay, we don't know what's happening. Let's think of this. And then, you come to recording, and Michael Jaston, as the Valiard, opens his mouth and says, there's nothing you can do to prevent the capacitors of spurious morality. And I'm like, there you go. That's it. That's it. Problem solved. Done. To this day... Sure, it means something. I'm sure if I Googled the definition of each word, it means something. I haven't done that. I kind of don't want to do that. I want to preserve the inherent babble, just because.
It does.
Yeah, but that's my favorite line from it.
I know I said this last time, but it really does sound like a challenge that RuPaul would give the queens on Drag Race. Like, ladies, this week you'll be. What was the line?
Will be preventing the catharsis of spurious morality.
Gentlemen, start your engines and make the best woman win.
It sounds like when they say I'm gonna give you a read or whatever. It sounds like that somebody trying to sound intelligent and insulting. So it's like, girl, you've got a catharsis of spurious morality.
I'm just waiting. I'm waiting for the T-shirt. I really want a T-shirt with that on it.
I can't believe there's not one out yet. But
probably like a fan-made one. But I want an official BBC-made T-shirt.
Yeah.
Let's get a little bit more of your product, please. We need it in my life.
Yeah, completely, absolutely. So moving on again. On this day in 1989, Survival Part 3 aired, ending the classic Doctor Who era. So
great story as well.
It is. It's always a bit bittersweet, but less so now that we know that after the long gap, at least there was light at the end of it. So
yes,
that was good.
It's bittersweet in the sense that I liked all the plans that they had for Ace as a character, because I really like Ace.
Yeah. Oh, Andy, you're breaking up. I think you may have to you may have to log out and back in, because we're only hearing every second word, I think, at the moment.
No.
Hello, you are. We'll barely hear you.
Right, 1 minute.
Checking. It may be me. Adam, can you hear me? Okay.
I can hear you. I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, it's definitely Andrew. Then I was just checking. That's cool. Well, not cool.
Hello.
Hopefully.
I am.
Hello. That's better. That's much better.
Okay.
You back?
No, I was just saying I really like Ace as a character, and I liked all the stuff they had planned for us. So it's kind of sad that it ended before they could finish it.
Yeah.
I have a very similar thing with it's not Doctor Who related, but I'm hosting, so I can go digression. I'm very similar with Star Trek Enterprise. It got cancelled after season 4, and there's tons of stuff about what they were going to do in season 5 that we'll now never see, and it's always so sort of bittersweet when you see that 4th season and then you think of all this cool stuff we could have had, but never mind. Moving on.
For Enterprise, which one's the captain? I can't remember.
Scott Bakula.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Right.
So yeah, and finishing off the air dates, on this day in 2011 we got a prequel to The Doctor, the Widow and the Wardrobe that was released online, and once again I'll just say we are pretty much on the dying days of November this year, and we've had a 10-second tease that the Christmas special will have Captain Jack in, and 3 pictures. So to all those people that say, that's all you ever get, you're just ungrateful, shut up. This time in 2011, we would have had a bloody prequel by now. So, moving to production. We're almost done, I promise. On this day in 1963, The Dead Planet was remade at Lime Grove Studios. I know often they had to do what we're having to do right now and refilm something because something went wrong. So,
how apt.
Very apt. And Andrew, just to clarify, that's The Dead Planet, not Planet of the Dead. We're not just confusing the names, okay?
First episode of First episode of the Daleks, not the mutants, the Daleks.
Yeah, the title changes will never make sense to any of us. But if you want to hear more about that, you could always head to my YouTube channel and hear our opinions the first time around. We can't replicate that kind of genius piss-taking of Anunnaki Doctor Who types. No offense, we are the same, but maybe the pedantry about titling should be allowed to just settle for a bit. And on this day in 1968, episode 3 of The Crotons was recorded at Lime Grove Studio. The Crotons featuring aliens from Birmingham or South Africa. We're not quite sure which.
One of the two. It's one of the two.
And on this day in 2005, a tone meeting was held for the episode Fear Her. Russell T Davies saw the episode as colourful and wanted elements of strangeness in suburbia, and I can only assume missed the bin when he balled up the script and threw it away, which he probably
I was just about to say it, and yet somehow he still greenlit it.
I'd argue it's not I think it was in the last Doctor Who magazine poll, Fear Her. Bear in mind, this was only 2014, so you're not including any of Capaldi or Jodie's eras. But Fear Her was voted the second to worst Doctor Who story ever, which I think is unfair. Yeah, I think that's unfair.
That's pretty harsh. I think there's even been worse since then. So
I'd put it as one of the worst of New Who without a doubt. I can think of a few that I'd put down there with it, but it's definitely one of the worst of New Who.
I'd put it in the bottom 50. If you ask me today, like with everything we've got, I'd still put it in the bottom 50, but I think the second worst is a bit too harsh.
Yeah, probably. But I would probably say bottom 10 or 20 personally. But
I'm waiting for people to type in the comments now. The Timeless Child is the worst story ever. How original.
I'm sorry, but when the Saranga conundrum exists...
Lol.
I mind that episode. I'm fine with it. It's fine. It's just a nice one. Just
let me a bit of Pating action, man. Gotta get gotta get that Stitch rip off, I
was gonna say, I at least like the fact it looked like Stitch, and that was about it.
I'm telling you now, I've got that $1 billion hit on our hands if we can organise the rights and have Pating versus Baby Yoda. Just seriously, people are going to throw their money at us.
Absolutely.
But so that concludes the On This Day section. You'll all be very pleased to hear. So without further ado, I'm going to queue up my soundboard because we're going to hit straight into the hit or miss section. As I said, slightly curtailed. We're going to have 5 as opposed to the usual 10 this time. So as you probably know by now, but just for the sake of anybody who's coming in late or new to the podcast, what it is basically I just mention throughout something from the Doctor Who universe, and we ask all 3 of us if we think it's a hit or a miss. And we'll go in order: guest, then co-host and host. So in this case, it would be Adam, then Andrew, then myself. I will just say, Andrew, just your volume's dipping in and out at random times. So if it gets any worse, just keep a listen now, because we may have to tell you to sort of just drop out and back in again, because it's slightly playing up.
I haven't said anything for a little bit. Is that so clear?
Yeah, it's just you're slightly phasing before you come in. So, but it's all right for now. I think it's fine. But if it gets worse, I'll probably just tell you to pop out and back in just to.
That's fine.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, moving into the hit or miss section then. Sorry, I don't know what that was. That was my attempt to be, cool Noel Edmonds type host.
That's me.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to steal your bit. There we go. Okay, hang on. Just bear with me 1 second because there it is. I just had to find the notes with the hit or misses written on. You'd think I'd have memorised them, given this is the second time we've tried this, but Either way. So number 1 on my hit or miss section is Petronella Osgood. So start with Adam.
Definite hit for me. She's clearly designed to be like she is a Doctor Who fan. She loves the Doctor, but I think it's done in quite a tasteful way. Just because she's a big fan of the Doctor, that isn't her character. Like that isn't the be all end all. Which I like. I mean, I like that she's got her own remits, and I really wish we'd have gotten an adventure with her and Peter Capaldi in the TARDIS, even if it was just for 1 episode. They have rectified that in the audio world with Big Finish, because there is a story with 12 and Osgood, which is quite good actually. But I just think she's great. I think it's a good representation of a Doctor Who fan without that being the main focal point, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I
But
remember
yeah.
you saying previously it was a better interpretation than, in your opinion, than Lee Evans from Planet of the Dead, and I said it was definitely better than whatever the guy's called, WizKid or whatever.
WizKid, yeah. Lee Evans, I think that they started out that way, like, oh yes, he's a Doctor Who fan, but we're pushing to make it more than that. But then they just kept leaning onto that way, to, like the whole "I love you" stuff, like that. Just for me, it just turned me off a little bit.
Fair enough. Okay, so Andrew, what do you think of Miss Osgood?
Yeah, I love Osgood. She's a massive hit for me. Definitely agree with what Adam said. She's definitely sort of a better attempt at making a Doctor Who fan character than Malcolm from the Dead Planet. So I did that one on purpose. But no, I love her. I think she's an amazing character. And Ingrid Oliver is a really good actor. And I mentioned in the first time recording, but I first saw her in her sketch show with Laura Watson, so it was really nice to see her doing something a bit more serious. And I just think she just plays the character really well. I remember being really sad when Missy killed her off in Death in Heaven. And I didn't say this the first time around, but I also wanted to sort of appreciate how they brought her back. I think it was really nicely done to have the Zygon callback from Day of the Doctor, but also the fact that we never really do find out which one's the human and which one's the Zygon. I think that's really nicely done. I like that. I like that a lot.
We the viewer do, but nobody else does, because they kind of they tip their hand to us. But I think a lot of people probably weren't paying attention, unfortunately, to that moment. Because there is definitely the reveal of it at the end of the Zygon inversion. But I'll just leave that to you guys to discover for yourself if you haven't done so yet. So, and I've got not much to add other than... Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, I love her character a lot. I wish we'd have seen more of her.
I agree, but I know she is. She's one of the sort of things, one of the main characters going forward on the unit audios. And she's still popping up. I mean, she's one of the main characters of either the escape room or one of the video games that's currently doing.
Oh, right, yeah, that's cool.
She's definitely turned back up in a trailer for something I've seen recently, anyway. So yeah, and as I say, I have not much to add except I agree with everything you guys are able to play the comedy brilliantly and subtly enough without going into parody. So I will just say,
absolutely fantastic.
And
hey,
yeah, there it is, the real star of the show. So, so number 2 on my list for this particular episode is Davros, leader of the Daleks. Adam?
Oh, absolute hit. I mean, you could think the idea of introducing the creator of the Daleks may have seemed like a very obvious choice, but I think the way in which they portrayed him has always been excellent right from the start. We were talking about how at first me and you, Mike, didn't get Genesis, but one thing I did get from the offset was the character of Davros. And I'd highly recommend to anyone listening, outside of his TV appearances, some of Davros's audio stories on Big Finish is literally some of not just the best Davros material, but some of the best Doctor Who stories ever, I would vouch. I'd recommend a story that is just called Davros, which you can listen to on Spotify because it's on there. And there's also some Davros stories in the Time War series with the 8th Doctor. I think it's volume 4 Davros appears. Basically anything Big Finish that has Davros in it, go and listen to it because it's fantastic. So yeah, definite hit for me.
Awesome. So yeah, awesome. Andrew?
Yeah, absolute hit from me again as well. He's a really, really well written villain. I really liked Genesis of the Daleks when I first watched it, and I would have been, how old would I have been? Maybe like 11, 12, I think I was when I first saw it.
We don't know, Andrew. We weren't there.
I know. I was asking myself, Mike. You don't need to be condescending. I really like this. I again agree. He's been portrayed really well from the get-go.
Cool.
And I think pretty much every actor that I've seen portray Davros has brought something to the role that sort of made it theirs, while still sort of staying true to the character. A performance that I don't think gets enough credit, but totally should, is Julian Bleach in Magician's Apprentice and Witcher's Familiar, which is probably my favourite. It's probably my favourite New Who Dalek story. I love that two-parter, and I think the characterisation of Davros and the fact that they kind of made him a sympathetic character almost, even from the start, is really, really well done.
Yeah, that was another one I was surprised there's so much hate for. Really sorry to be a pain, Andrew, but would it be a huge inconvenience for you to sign out and back in? Because I have a feeling the listeners probably only heard like 60-70% of what you just said, because it was dipping in and out, and I don't want them to not hear your great sort of stories and your quality input. So maybe just pop out of the Discord, call them back in. Hopefully that'll.
I did that. Is that okay?
Okay, no, we're still getting a little bit of fuzz. But that's fine. I think it might be manageable. So we'll carry on.
On my end. But no,
yeah,
in a nutshell, Davros is great.
Cool. And I would say the same. I have a funny story regarding the whole Big Finish thing in that Davros himself, more or less, Terry Molloy, also recommended, I think he said specifically, Davros, the Big Finish story, which is kind of his backstory and his own sort of genesis, as being his favourite sort of thing that he would recommend that most people or a lot of people wouldn't know of, and that he thoroughly thinks is brilliant, and was plugging to me when I met him at a convention, which, by the way, one of the nicest guys in the world. He sort of gave me a little fake strangulation for wearing my TARDIS t-shirt, and he let me sort of stand up and ask him a question during the Q&A, where I asked what his actual favourite Davros televised story he was in was, and what his favourite moment was, and he said in both cases it was Revelation of the Daleks, and it was the line that certainly we couldn't tell people they were eating other people that would have created what you would call consumer resistance. He still gets a huge kick out of that line, and that's kind of his convention story, I think, talking about that.
It's a great line.
Yeah. It is. It's great, and he was a great Davros, and still is. I think I'm not sure if he still does it on Big Finish, but he's done a heck of a lot of stuff on there, and he's really good. And yeah, I'm the same. I would recommend a lot of, particularly if you don't think that Davros is as three-dimensional of a character, or you're sort of iffy about his origins, then I'll recommend that as well. But yeah, in terms of Davros, just as an idea of giving the Daleks a voice and somebody to actually go sort of mano a mano with the Doctor and not just be this monotone voice, I think it's a genius idea. Yes, the design's a little bit sort of Mekon or whatever you call it from Dan Dare, but it still kind of works. And it's been updated while still looking the same, which is always a good sort of trend. So once again, I just have to say...
Absolutely fantastic.
Hey.
So, yeah, I think that's 3 hits for Davros and 3 for Osgood so far. So we're hitting a lot of popularity. So I'll move on to number 3 then, which is, funnily enough, the Mechanoids.
Yeah, it's gonna be a very soft miss for me on the Mechanoids. I mean, whilst I really love their design, like the whole idea of it, but from the one TV appearance we have of them, for me, one of the big things I couldn't get past was their voice, because I remember the very first time I watched The Chase, I couldn't understand what they were saying at all. Yeah. And that might have been the limitations of the technology at the time or whatever. But even when you hear them in, like, you know, if they've popped up in audio or anything like that, they're just not that enticing as characters, if that makes sense. Like, the design's cool. I feel it's more more style over substance. I think that's the way to put it. So yeah, soft miss. They're almost there, but yeah, soft miss.
Yeah, okay. Andrew?
I would also give them a bit of a miss, mainly just because I think the Chase got better once they replaced them with Anne and Sean and Mark and the actual Chasers who can do the quiz. I'm sorry, I've never actually seen the Doctor Who story of the Chase, but I do know what the Mechanoid design is, and for the time I guess it works, but nowadays I do think it looks a little bit sort of camp, I guess would be the right word for it. But I really don't have that much of an opinion just because I haven't seen The Chase. I'm sorry, everyone. But yeah, so I'll sort of leave it a neutral, I guess, because I don't really have anything I can say.
That's cool. Well, it makes sense if you think that it's fairer for you kind of not to do it because you haven't seen The Chase, then that's fair enough, I understand. And you probably haven't heard any of the Mechanoid audios or stuff either, so we'll leave that, and then we'll say that it'll be 50-50 then, because I'm going to go ahead and say that I really like the Mechanoids. Funnily enough, your complaints about their voice and stuff, I see what you're saying, and it seems like from the sort of trailer that we now have for the Daleks animated series, that's the first thing they've changed, because their voices sound completely different and way more sort of legible. You can actually hear what they're saying, and obviously...
You said it's Angela Mohindra, didn't you?
It's Angela who plays the kind of head mechanoid, the kind of leader of the species.
Oh, okay.
So they all have their own kind of voices, which aren't electronically distorted at all and just sound kind of... not Dalek-like at all, but certainly on those lines where it's a lot clearer to hear them. And then Anjali Mohindra, of course, she's just Anjali Mohindra with a slight reverb on her voice.
I'm glad she's getting more work in the Doctor Who universe, because she's a very good actor, and I loved her in Sarah Jane Adventures. Yeah, funnily enough, I don't know if you did see this, but when we were referring earlier to the special features on the Season 8, the collection Blu-ray set, one of those is that for the Behind the Sofas, they've got Anjali and her life partner, shall we say, Sacha Dhawan, who she's dating, watching the episodes for the Behind the Sofa.
I think that's a brilliant decision. I think that's so cool, especially because next year is going to be 50 years of the Master as well.
That never even occurred to me, because it's the Master's first appearance, so that would make sense for... See, I figured it was just the COVID restrictions, and because they live together as a couple anyway, it made more sense that way, because I think when they showed the clips of the usual, what's her name, Janet Fielding and Sarah Sutton, they're kind of 6 feet apart on different chairs this time around. So.
I mean, it's sad when you first see it, because obviously it just hits home everything that's gone on this year. But then I thought, at least we need to be really thankful we're getting anything. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah.
Saw people complaining, saying, Behind the Sofa's ruined because they're not sat next to each other. I'm like, come on, get over it. Like, it's the same content. They're just not sat on the same couch.
Exactly.
2 out of 3 of them were anyway, because Katie Manning and Stuart Bevan are kind of more or less in each other's lap, because probably, I don't know, they're just close or they live together or something anyway. I know they're a former couple. And obviously Anjali and Sasha are kind of arm in arm. So it's only really Sarah and Janet who have to distance. And quite frankly, it would probably benefit people to be 6 feet away from Janet Fielding sometimes.
Do you know what? She's been my favourite on the Behind the Sofas, because she's just honest, isn't she? She just doesn't hold anything back, and I just love it.
It's hilarious watching her get confused about which story she's watching, or when she's missed a key plot point and she just doesn't understand something.
Yeah.
It really is. It's like watching with your favourite kooky aunt. Sometimes it is. I give her a hard time, but she's awesome. She's a great person. But yeah, as regards the mechanoids, I'll just say they're my favourite attempt to replicate the success of the Daleks, which I know they did a lot in those early years. Better than the Quarks, better than the Voord. For whatever reason, the design just speaks to me, and I really like it. Yes, it's terrible, but so is the Dalek design when you break it down to, hey, it's a whisk and a plunger. So yeah, I like them anyway, but yeah, I'd say that's one hit, one miss, and one... undecided voter, shall we say. So we'll move on. We've only got 2 more left, and they're kind of linked. So we'll say, first of all, the next one is the Sontarans.
Oh, yeah, Sontaran's definite hit. I remember saying this last time. When I was a kid, you always I say always, I used to rank, who were the Doctor's big bads, the ranking of top 10 enemies or whatever. And obviously you've got the Daleks at number 1, Cybermen at number 2. And I used to rank it personally based on how many times a monster appeared. Not necessarily, whether the story was good, because when I was a kid, I hadn't seen a lot of classic Who. I just assumed, if they've been in the show a lot of times, that means they must be good. And Sontaran, not including the Master, were number 3. So but I like the concept, that whole clone warrior race, because again, it's one of those things. I think you say it on paper, you might think, that's really boring, sort of like the Davros concept, I guess. But then the way you can play it out, and they have played it out, they've done so many different stories with quite a simple concept. So for that reason, I'd say it's a hit. I even like Strax.
I'm not too sure about that. I think Strax's overplayed comedy element might have slightly ruined the intense sort of fear of the warrior race of Sontarans, but...
Yeah, but you like the Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe, so your opinion doesn't matter. I'm sorry, Mike.
It's funny how that comes in crystal clear without audio problems.
No, on the whole, for me, Strax included, I'll give the Sontarans a hit.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Andrew, I'll chime in after you, then I'll be kind enough to defer to you even after your blasphemy.
I'm kidding. Yeah, also a hit. I think I like the simplicity, but also the what's the word I'm looking for? I think the design is simple, but it really works. Effectiveness, there we go, that's the word I'm looking for.
Okay.
I really like the design a lot. Clearly they work because they've had quite a lot of longevity throughout the show. I do just kind of wish we'd have got more of them as villains in the modern era of Who, because we had Sontaran Stratagem in the Poison Sky, which was fine, I guess. It wasn't like brilliant, but it was fine. And then also we have Strax, who is pretty much purely comedic. I'd probably argue that the best sort of Sontaran villain we've had in modern Who is Commander Karg from Sarah Jane Adventures.
Yeah, actually, I think completely.
I think he was pretty damn good. So yeah, overall, sometimes they're a hit, and there's rumours that they're going to be in Series 13. Obviously, nothing's confirmed. But if they are, then that's cool because it'd be nice to sort of have them back as villains.
I think that's overdue, but I also am not getting my hopes up because from those set picks, as far as I'm concerned, that could be anything. I think that's people leaping. It's similar to the people that last year were like, oh, look, there's going to be an episode that features the Sea Devils or whatever because they're at a beach, and it turned out to be nothing of the sort, you know?
I was very disappointed when it wasn't a Sea Devils episode. Even though I didn't buy into the hype, I was still kind of secretly hoping it was going to be, and then Praxis was just kind of there.
I feel bad for Praxis because I think that a lot of people's opinion of that is tainted by the fact that it's not got like that specific enemy in it. And I'm like, as if you hadn't went in expecting something.
I don't dislike the episode. I think it's fine. It was just even going in without expectations, it was just kind of decent.
I think it's distinctly average, but I know a lot of people are kind of spitting venom at it purely because it's not what they expected.
Yeah, that's not fair.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. But yeah, my favourite thing about the Sontarans, and again, apologies if this is controversial, but I just find it so funny, is at the moment that one of the kind of not my Doctor Who's far too woke crowd had said when the reports were that the Sontarans may be appearing next season, they chimed in with, oh, I bet they'll probably be non-binary as well, which I find hilarious because they always
Because they are, yeah. They literally are. They are clones. They don't have gender. So I saw someone commented on that, and it even made a point of saying they clearly don't have an idea of what gender is because Strax constantly called Clara a boy.
Yeah,
like
it's just
constantly mistook people's gender. So they don't have a concept of that. So
just remember seeing those people like comment the whole non-binary, like, oh, they'll make them non-binary or whatever. And I just looked at that and I was like, I'll let the internet do its work here. Like, I don't need to. I was like, I don't need to chime in. Like,
I'm not being funny though. Like, even if that was like a whole big thing, why the chuff does it matter? Jesus Christ!
It's the same people that I have issue with where they complain. Like, I literally had an argument online with somebody who claimed that they don't watch Discovery. It's ruined Star Trek because it's made it into a woke mess. And I was like, are you trying to tell me that in 1966 it wasn't woke to have a Russian, a Chinaman, and a black woman on the bridge of a
Oh my God, I know, right? It's like those people who always claim that Doctor Who's become too political nowadays. And I'm like, were you watching in 1963 when they literally essentially recreated the Nazis?
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, but anyway, moving on to back to the topic.
Sorry.
No, it's not your fault. I did the same. But yeah, with regards to Sontarans, I agree. I think the economy of design is brilliant. It's the cleverest idea to have the kind of helmet in that shape where you don't necessarily need the prosthetics, but the prosthetics are great. I think they haven't changed that much from the old series to the new one. They're one of the best old series monsters in terms of design and sort of being instantly iconic and just evoking something. I've liked, I think, almost, if not all of the stories they've been in. Yes, I think Strax pushed it too far, and I would like to see at least an episode to bring them back to being a threat. But on the whole, with regards to the Sontarans, and I'll try and find a different quote because I don't want to just bore everybody of the great Christopher Eccleston, and instead I will say...
And it is going to be fantastic.
Hey.
The voice of David Tennant there, but yeah.
Nice bit of Rose of Seam in the background there as well. I do just want to say as well, very quickly, just before we move on to the last one. if they do appear in season 13, if we get confirmation that that's happening, I'm actually quite excited for that, because for all the things that Chibnall has sort of hit or missed with his writing over the course of his era so far, one thing I think he has done consistently well is writing the pre-existing villains. Like,
Yes.
I think the Dalek was really well done in Resolution. I think the Sidemen, especially Ashad, was brilliant in Series 12, and I think the Master's been really good. So I'd quite like to see what he did with the Sontarans, and I kind of hope that if he does bring them back, that he makes them a bit more. I guess threatening is the word, but really just like staple their position as, don't forget these are villains. I feel like Chibnall could possibly do that with his reputation for how he's done the other pre-existing monsters. But anyway, yeah, that's just my 2 cents on that.
I only have one thing to say to that, Andrew, when it came to your opinion on that.
Who the man? Oh, I'm never saying that again. Fine.
Sorry, I just saw it and couldn't resist.
Oh, 11, I missed you. I miss Matt so much.
Oh, bless. Well, hang on. Just to even it out for everyone.
Shut up. Just shut up. Shut up. Shut up. Shut it up.
Geez, sorry, Doctor.
That sounds like my favourite.
Oh, God. I love Capaldi so much. I love them all. Anyway, moving on.
Moving on to the final thing, which is kind of related to the last one, and it is hit or miss the 2 Doctors, Adam.
The 2 Doctors. Absolutely brilliant story. I think that one was actually the first Sontaran story I ever watched. I'd only read about them at this point, and I think it's a great Sontaran story. It's a great Doctor crossover, even though 2 and 6 don't actually spend that much time together. But I actually think the way the story's set up, that works to its benefit. I don't think this thing of, if you've got a multi-Doctor story, you have to have them together all the time. I don't think that's necessarily the best way. But I think it's got some wonderful guest performances. Jacqueline Pierce, especially, absolutely brilliant. And some lovely location work in Spain as well. It's a very entertaining story. And I think, if anything, it proved, to me at least, that the 45-minute format for the classic series did work.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. Absolutely.
So absolute hit for me.
Sorry, I always do that. So yeah,
no, it's all right.
Andrew, then yours. Have you seen the 2 Doctors?
I mentioned last time that I seen it once, but it was a long time ago, so I don't remember a lot of it. But I remember thinking it was very enjoyable. And I remember, of the few 6 Doctor serials I've seen, I remember it being one of the ones where I found him to be a bit more likable, I guess, in a way. Because I know 6 can be quite a divisive character. But from what I can remember, I'll give it a soft hit.
Okay. Yeah, old 6, he gets a bit of a hard time. Oops, sorry. Just literally got a notification reminding me that I can get a free audio download of Polly's story to Big Finish, which I downloaded 4 days ago. Silly pushing things. So yeah, if anybody's out there, well, you're probably too late now, because it's been a while by the time this goes out. But yeah, Will, if you're listening and you haven't got it, there you go. It's a freebie for you. So yeah, when it comes to the 2 Doctors, I will just chime in first of all and say,
Well, yes, tick.
I think it's a tick, but it's a soft hit. I'm very on the fence with this story. I find the idea of the Doctor transforming, the second Doctor specifically transforming into an enemy, to be kind of borderline offensive and just silly. And a lot of the moments in it are silly and camp, but again, that's Doctor Who. It's hard to be mad about that. Don't really love the redesigned suddenly tall Sontarans. We all kind of probably had an issue with the last time. But yeah, it's great to see the second Doctor, to see Troughton again, to see Fraser Hines. It is probably one of the better stories for Colin and Nicola as well. And yeah, obviously, as I said the last time, the what's infectious is the idea that everybody's having a really good time, which is probably because they've got a free holiday to Spain. So you'd probably be in a good mood as well, I would imagine, given that.
I definitely would.
Yeah.
Depends how warm it is.
Well, it looks pretty sunny at the time. But yeah, so I'd say that's pretty much 3 hits. And again, apologies for splitting the hit or miss into a half, but we always have a lot to say because we're all huge Doctor Who fans, and we've only got half an hour here for our review before we have to lose at least Adam. So we will try to get through this as quickly as we possibly can, and we will reveal officially that the episode we're reviewing in this podcast is
Welsh.
Everything Changes from Torchwood. Yes, the most Welsh episode ever. Andrew, I know you've got some Torchwood stories, but I'm going to ask you to save it till the end because we can maybe get into that when Andrew has to leave if we don't have to run off.
That's fine.
When Adam has to leave, I should say. We'll do the episode review first, but I know, and guys, believe me when I say that's worth sticking around for, so take that as a tease.
There are some pretty banging stories, to be fair, so you want to stick around.
So it means that we've actually got half an hour for just the episode review, and then I'm happy to stay here and listen to Andrew's stories again. Adam's already heard them, but yeah, guys, believe me, you're going to like it. So yeah, once again, apologies. We're reviewing Torchwood, so it's kind of an adult podcast. So if you hear anything a little blue or a little bit of language, that would be why. This isn't one for the kids. Not that the podcast ever usually is, but there we go. So we're dealing with Torchwood. As I said, Everything Changes, the first episode. Not technically a pilot, but basically had to be. Written by Russell T Davies, directed by Brian Kelly. So without further ado, do any of you two guys have a sort of brief log line before we get into notes to sort of set up what you thought on the episode without giving too much away?
Well, I'll let Andrew go first, just because I want to make sure I know what I'm saying with my log line. I want to make sure I get the right ethos of it.
Okay, we'll let Andrew go first, and then if you want, I can go, and then you can sort of.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. Okay.
An enjoyable start to a spin-off that sets its tone from the get-go whilst having nice callbacks to the original show.
Okay, and that's your whole thing, yeah? That's your log line.
Yeah, I'm trying to be vague.
Brief. Okay. And I said it's a first episode that has to function as a pilot, establishing the show while being a solid episode of it. Russell T Davies falls back on familiar structure and tropes to clue the audience in without feeling like an info dump. It's intriguing enough to keep you watching, in my opinion, while still having to be a good standalone episode of sci-fi TV. So yeah, we'll move to you then, Adam, and ask if you've got any thoughts before we get into notes.
I would say Everything Changes is a promising start to a brand new sci-fi drama, but this ain't your granddad's Doctor Who, son.
I think that goes without saying. So if you guys are happy, I'll probably lead the conversation if that's okay with you guys. Just
yeah.
Piece by piece, jump in with my notes, and then I'll ask if I feel like I've tread over you guys. If there's anything you want to say in regards to my notes, feel free to jump in. So we'll start with, obviously we're straight in with the music and the Torchwood intro, which is it's very much a summation of the show. It's hyper, it's kinetic, it's flashy, it's in your face. The letters jump around to form the word. So yeah, and it is worth pointing out that it does credit Indira Varma, who was always listed as a main cast member and was plugged as being one of the Torchwood team, which did piss me off no end because I fell madly in love with her during this episode and then got really peeved because she was killed off. So
I really like the Torchwood theme song.
Oh yeah, go ahead. You like it, yeah?
I really like the Torchwood theme song.
It just seems like there's not a lot to it to me. It really does just seem like it's somebody was like, look, we need something adult. Can you do something that sounds like the Doctor Who theme but ultra techno?
Maybe that's why I like it. I don't know, because there isn't much to it, but it is enjoyable, and I think it sort of establishes the setting kind of from the get-go. Because I feel like the Doctor Who theme's a bit more whimsical, whereas this one's very, for lack of a better word, gritty.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And it is. It's kind of like I said, because it's having to be adult. I think it's very much kind of, you would imagine you would hear it in a nightclub, whereas you can't really imagine that about the Doctor Who theme.
I can't imagine hearing this in a nightclub either. I'm not going to lie, Mike.
Really? Or maybe it's just me. I'm old.
I will say I have heard the Doctor Who theme in a nightclub, and it was so good. It was. I was very drunk at this point, but I have witnesses that said this did happen. Whatever DJ, this was at a bar in Liverpool. The DJ was just on a mad one. He was playing like all sorts of stuff you wouldn't expect, and he played a bunch of like remixes to TV themes. I remember I think it was the David Tennant version? Might have been the David Tennant version, like the rock version, but he added like a beat behind it. And it actually really worked. So
I have heard like Orbital and stuff do it, and it does kind of work. But yeah, anyway. So then from there, obviously, we get into the episode proper, and we have gorgeous sort of helicopter shots of Wales all lit up at night, which reminded me of the TV show Angel. Speaking of spin-offs from other shows, but it seemed a little bit jarring because, let's be honest, Cardiff is not Los Angeles. But, it still looks great, and it sets your tone, as I said, which also is set by the fact that we quick zoom in on a gruesome kind of corpse, and we see that there's lots of police, and definitely a lot of Welsh voices as well.
As opposed to a non-gruesome happy corpse?
Yeah.
Hey, shush. Be quiet. Be quiet. We're Doctor Who fans. We need clarification that an assassin is deadly. Okay. So yeah, as I said, a lot of Welsh, and as I said, straight off, which I found really jarring and didn't love, was the idea that we have to point out that we're for adults, and so it was an immediate kind of swear word, and no procedure anymore. It's a fucking disgrace. It just came out of nowhere and was like, yeah, we get it, you're adult. But I suppose it does establish the tone, and that it is, well, if you had any kids watching, you definitely haven't anymore. So yeah. Moving on, obviously, I think it feeds into RTD's kind of thing, that it also deals with kind of the mundane domestic side of things. Are you going to go for drinks or whatever they say to Gwen, and she's dealing with that, but doesn't seem connected to it, and kind of is wondering what's going on in this like X-Files type scene with Torchwood.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and that says, one last thing before I jump over to you guys and ask for your thoughts, is that Gwen is very much your point of view character, and she's entirely your Rose Tyler, and this episode is very like Rose in more than just that, but certainly in that respect. So yeah, thoughts on the first sort of scene and the first few moments then, guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely maybe the abrasiveness of like, the corpse, and as you say, like the language and the tone. It's definitely not how you'd start necessarily a Doctor Who episode. So even right from the get-go, you can tell RTD and co are trying to really cement this. I think, like you said earlier, that this is not for children. And I just, that whole thing of showing off Cardiff, even though it's not LA, it's sort of jumping, but I won't go into it. Let's just put it this way. To anyone listening who hasn't seen it, there are two specific moments in this episode where characters are stood on roofs of buildings in Cardiff, which then pan out to wide shots of them standing on a building in Cardiff. I would argue that both of these scenes serve no purpose to the actual story. I don't know if you guys agree. I think they serve no purpose. Yeah. There is, especially the one where it's Jack on his own, those when you watch it, you know what I mean? But that one of Jack, there is no reason why that is there. It's never explained. I think it's, having thought on it, I think it's literally just an opportunity for them to say, look, it's Cardiff, it's Wales, doesn't it look nice? So yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'll chime in just super quick here and say, I didn't mention this last time, but if you haven't seen it, there's a brilliant Dead Ringers sketch where they take the piss out of Torchwood. It's a super short sketch, but obviously it's sort of pointing out everything that Torchwood is, and they do kind of make fun of that and the way that it's filmed and the way what it's trying to be. So you have like John Coleshaw as John Barrowman turning up, and the police officer saying, "What have we got here?" and him replying with, "You've got a bargain basement Tom Cruise, the writer of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and the clippings from an X-Files tone meeting. What can you do?"
I like that.
It's pretty fun. And then like, every 2 minutes they're flashing to a new scene, and it's like, "Oh, we were just somewhere else. Now we're on top of a roof. Don't worry about it. Just stand and look all dramatic,
Pretty much.
Is the show, isn't it, really? But yeah, Andrew, sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead and your thoughts on the intro sort of moments.
No, I think it establishes the term pretty much straight away, as you said, and I do quite like the way that they introduce the Torchwood group into it, but I definitely agree with what you said about Gwen is definitely the Rose of this episode. This episode, I mentioned it last time, but this episode really does just feel like Russell T Davies got Rose, plopped it on his desk, and just like added parts that made it more adult to the point where I mentioned it when we discussed this before, but there's even a scene later on that, at least to me, almost perfectly mirrors Rose. But I'll mention that when we get to it. But yeah, this definitely just feels like adult Rose.
Yeah, I don't think it's just Doctor Who either. I mean, I read a review after we recorded last time that said that this is just Russell T Davies' MO. Like in every series, he always gives you a point of view character and follows them so that it's easier than introducing the whole world to you. You're introduced through them.
Yeah.
And I think they specifically name-checked like Queer as Folk and Bob and Rose and things.
To be fair, I think...
Scene, but... Yeah.
I think that's a pretty good way to do things, though, because it saves you having to do like one big exposition dump. You just kind of put on the shoulders of this character and just experience it through them, and I think you almost kind of learn the world via osmosis through that character, and I think that works quite well, to be fair.
I agree. I don't think it's a bad thing. It's sort of RTD shorthand, but it's also television shorthand, and it clues you in to everything. Speaking of which, as does the next scene where you get the resurrection glove scene, I think tries to sort of set up everyone from Torchwood's personality and kind of does a good job, but that's done better later on that we'll hopefully get to. But yeah, it was nice seeing the idea of the sci-fi weirdness. What I did like about this scene, first of all, was the idea of the subversion of Torchwood talking and Gwen looking, and then Jack sort of revealing that he knew she was there the whole time, and like, what do you think? And then looking up at her, which I think was a really cool, like, I didn't expect that. What I didn't like about this particular scene was talking about like tone and stuff. I do feel like a couple of times it verges into kind of just dark and edgy for the sake of it. The scene when Captain Jack basically, it's good that Captain Jack obviously asks the chap when they don't know what else to talk about, like, what did you see? What happens in death? Because as we learn, that feeds into his character. But I could have done without the guy kind of saying, "Oh, look, there's nothing. It's horrible. Isn't everything so dark?"
It's Croydon.
Oh no, it's horrible. It's an NMD's bedroom. So yeah. Anyway, moving on. I thought that was just a little bit like, it feels like you're trying too hard to be emo and dark, and I could have done without it. It jars horribly with me. It doesn't sit right with me for whatever reason. So I didn't really like that. But yeah, then we get into what you may have been alluding to, Andrew, which is that you're basically seeing Gwen's home life for the next few scenes as she kind of runs back home, and we see her with Reese, and we see her going to sort of work day to day. The city's now lit up, and it looks all different, and it looks like it could be an average cop show, but she kind of seems out of it. You do get that awesome joke, which I have to, again, just quickly give a shout out to, about PC Andy saying, not everything's about CSI these days. I'd like to see CSI Cardiff. They'd measure the velocity of a kebab. Which I think it's a funny line, but it also sums up that Gwen's like, I don't care about any of this, and it's montages of her kind of shitty normality of routine and not really liking it, and even when she gets the head injury, it's like, ugh, this crap again. But
the one, just one note I have about the direction there is I really like, I mentioned this last time as well, but I like the shot of her laying in bed with Reese, because it kind of shows the distance between them, because their backs to each other quite far apart, and he's asleep and she's still awake, and it kind of shows the fact that she's not very happy in the life that she has at the moment, which sort of, sets up for what's going to end up happening later on. So this definitely mirrors Rose in the sense that, like, we see all the mundane and the normality, but then the scene coming up as well kind of reflects Rose even more so, I'd say, which is the bit in the hospital, but we'll get to that.
No. Well, first of all, I will say thank you. I'm pleased you brought that up, because I didn't really remember, because I've only got my own notes, but I do think that's a great observation, and one that I didn't necessarily notice. But yeah, go ahead. You take us into the next scene, which is where you get, Gwen going into the hospital and everything cordoned off. So.
Gwen goes into the hospital after getting a head injury from trying to break up a bar fight, and we kind of see that she's just kind of done with all this shit. And then we cut to the hospital. She's having her head stitched up, and as she's sort of leaving the ward, she sees Jack's coat and instantly is like, "You. I remember you," and so she follows him, comes off to this cordoned off area, asks why it's been blocked off, and the porter guy sort of says, "Oh, well, I thought you guys did it," because she's in a police uniform. And then she heads into this taped off room, and this, at least for me, maybe doesn't for other people, but for me it just perfectly mirrors Rose, or the start of Rose when she's walking through the basement of the shop.
Wilson, I've got the lottery money. Wilson.
It pretty much reminds me almost note for note of that scene, to the walking down the corridor, to seeing the creature, to like this really delayed reaction of fright. Even thinking back on that, I didn't mention it the last time, but even sort of looking at those two scenes since,
Absolutely, because Rose sort of sees the Autons and is like, yeah, great, what is it, student prank or whatever? And Gwen's reaction to the Weevil is also like, oh, that's great, what is it, some kind of mask or something? Yeah.
It's almost note for note exactly the same. Even to the point where, like, the hero, like, dashes in and saves them from it, although in Rose's instance it's just 9, and in this instance it's Jack, who are the other two there? Owen and Tosh, I think, are there as well.
I think it's Owen and Tosh, yeah.
I do like this scene. It builds up the tension nicely, because obviously we as the audience know that it's real. We know that it's an alien, and we're like, move out the way, you silly woman, it's gonna kill you. And then the portal comes along and it does kill him. I will say, just notes I've got for this scene, the special effects makeup or the prosthetic for the Weevil looks incredible.
It's bloody brilliant. It looks like something out of a Hellraiser or something.
Yeah.
It looks really good. Especially later on, we get a scene where it's in the cell and you can see all the different parts moving, and I think that's really well done. The blood effect, however, well, two things about the blood effect. One, it's very excessive, so it's clearly going for look how grown up we are. We have blood splattering everywhere. And two, it doesn't look bad, but it also doesn't look realistic either.
Yeah, I would agree. Everything you say is seconded. I will just quickly add that during that scene, I think there's also a lot of less so in Doctor Who, but certainly in this, there's kind of a visual language of a horror film. So seeing the Weevil sort of at the end of a corridor and it looking human reminded me of a lot of kind of zombie films and stuff that I've seen. Particularly, there's a Spanish horror film called Wreck that not many people have seen.
Excellent series of horror films.
Brilliant movies, but yeah, certainly the first one when it's all in an apartment complex, and there's an awful lot of that of like seeing, oh look, it's the old neighbor at the end of the corridor, and you the viewer are like, get the fuck out of there, it's a zombie, and they're like, oh no, it's just Mrs. Hall or whatever from down the way. So there's a lot of that which I think cues you into this is going to be a little bit more horror. But as I say, I think I agree with you guys that the overabundance of blood and gore was perhaps a bit too far.
It's just a bit OTT in that thing we're saying about trying to say this is for adults. Like, so I was trying to think, when this aired, I was 10, and say if I'd watched it anyway, not knowing it was for adults, like the language might have surprised me, but I think like, at the real moment when, say, if I was watching with my parents, they would have definitely switched off, would have been that moment. Do you know what I mean? Like, language I could probably let slide, but yeah, that they would have been like, no, this ain't Doctor Who. And, fair enough. I'm glad it had its own identity. I know, like, we're harping on about, and it, quite rightly, that it is trying too hard, but at least it's trying. It's not trying to be Doctor Who with a different character roster.
It's definitely not necessarily a bad thing. It's just more a case of, I feel like they could have still had the blood and not had it be so obviously, oh, look, there's blood everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think, it's worth pointing out that as much as it seems like I'm criticising the show for this, I do think it found a perfect balance for that in season 2, when it was able to do the kind of adult Doctor Who spin-off whilst also not being, we have to shove it in your face that everything's the F word and sex and blood splitting everywhere, But yeah, the only other thing I will mention is there's a couple of sort of issues with logic in this scene that bug me. First of all, why is the Weevil fully dressed in perfectly pressed jacket, like leather jacket and clothes? Doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
If I'm going to go out hunting for humans to eat, I want some perfectly ironed clothes to do it in.
Well, that's as may be, but again, they're said to have been living in the sewers eating shit, so I can only assume it raided a Burton's and dressed itself before heading to the hospital.
That is a scene that we needed and never got.
Nakedness is not how we do things at the BBC unless you're a presenter over the age of 70.
Just this Weevil charging through M&S, just stealing clothes off the rack, killing as it goes.
I'm all for it.
Slavering and looking all horrible, and then stopping in a leather jacket and being like, I like the look of this.
I'm just picturing, like, do you remember that scene in the third Harry Potter film where the housekeeper knocks on the hotel door and, like, opens it and just, like, gets fire blown in her face and just goes, I'll come back later. I'm picturing that with the Weevil in a changing room.
Indeed. But yeah, related to that as well is that the way that it's filmed, it makes it look like the Torchwood team members who are there are kind of standing by in the wings, as it were, and watching the porter get kind of killed horribly and only stepping where it's Gwen, which is kind of like, guys, you were there the whole time watching? What's going on? But yeah, so then we head back to reality and see everything kind of slow down and become uneasy and askew as Gwen's kind of, she's jarred, but she's back into this boring life kind of thing. You know, you get the hint of the woman who she's asked to look up Captain Jack asking if she's seeing ghosts, which, again, kind of theme of the series, I think, to a degree. Quickly just shout out here, the location work at Roald Dahl Place and the Millennium Centre is gorgeous. Great idea to have that be Torchwood's hub and that be your central location, because it just looks brilliant. I don't think there's any bad angle that you can film it at, and it always just immediately gives you production value, but it's there. It's an actual thing.
Plus, as we'll hear later on as well, it also ties in really nicely to Boomtown from Series 1 of Doctor Who.
Yes, yeah, well, yeah, just remember to mention that, because you sort of brought that up, and I did kind of register it, but I don't think quite as much. Yeah, related to sort of former references and stuff, when Gwen's trying to infiltrate Torchwood, I did make a note that the Easter egg is that it's Jubilee Pizza that she grabs the food from, and that's a particular sort of pizza chain that obviously don't really exist, but they'd previously appeared in Dalek. And they're a reference to the audio story that was kind of the basis of that, which is called Jubilee. So that's kind of a Doctor Who deep dive nerd reference. Regarding that, though, one thing I did say sort of previously and that I still stick by is that I really don't like when TV shows do something stupid and think they can get away with it by just lampshading the fact. So yes, it is really shit that you're a covert ops team that orders pizza by name, and just having Owen own up to it and say, oh yeah, sorry, I'm a twat, doesn't somehow excuse the fact that it's just dumb. It's bad writing and it's stupid, you know what I mean?
It is a bit daft, but what I will give it, and the thing I said last time, is that whole scene where Gwen goes to like the Torchwood hub is so cool. And I think I said last time, it's the Batcave moment. It really is.
Yeah.
Like,
well, you take us there, because, we've given Andrew a chance, so you take us straight into, because that's our next scene, is sort of entering the hub that's the Batcave.
Oh, sure, yeah. I mean, like, imagine for someone who'd never seen it before, like, imagine, you see the dark corridor, you're like, okay. I bet anyone, when they watch that live, like, didn't expect what we got. I love how it's a cool mix of like the underground, like almost like the sewer system mixed with lots of tech and lots of like cogs and gears and all that sort of stuff. I just love it. I think it's a great design for the Torchwood hub.
I agree. I think it's a great set. It's also worth pointing out that I can't not see it, because I know that that's the set. I don't know if you guys are aware of this. If you've seen The Next Doctor, that it's the same set that they use for the kind of workhouse where all the kids are put to work.
That sounds about right.
Torchwood Hub. And when you know that, that's all you can see. So whenever I'm watching the Next Doctor, I'm like, they're clearly in the Torchwood Hub. Come on, it's so obvious.
I love this scene. I think it's really well done. I love the way it sort of reveals a hidden door and then Gwen walks down. And I mentioned last time, this piece of music that plays when she first walks into the actual base is my favourite piece in the episode.
I would agree. I think it's brilliant. Absolutely, 100%. I think it's maybe a tiny bit intrusive for me, but it's also a good piece of music, so you can't blame them for sort of lampshading it right in front of your face.
It's very Murray Gold.
Yeah, but I love Murray Gold, so that's fine.
Oh, yeah.
I said much the same, just that, introducing this set is brilliant. The idea of whoever did that is great, from set design to direction. I also think it's a really well-written scene. The idea of Gwen kind of trying to infiltrate them and then them being sort of almost breaking the tension with the gag of, that lasted 0.2 seconds, and, oh, come on, guys, she was going to say, I've got pizza, and I would have said something. And I think, as I said, John Barrowman kind of takes the episode here and shows that he's the leading man and leads by example, and I think that's great. But it also sets up the sort of Tosh, and despite being almost the best of this team, is very blasé about kind of covering up death and stuff. And you get a lot of that mixed with the fantastical. So as soon as you see something sort of horrible like a weevil or death, then you see that there's like a pterodactyl flying about.
Why? Is it ever explained why they have a pterodactyl?
It's just said that it was kind of one of the things that fell through the rift and it's sort of a stray. But nothing's ever really... I mean, there is a glorious moment at the end of season 1 that I won't spoil because I know Adam's kind of watching for the first time. Where Mifanwi, as she's called, actually gets something to do. But for the most part, it just kind of feels like, we get the picture, you're kooky sci-fi, But yeah, I think I also noted it's worth pointing out that it's Susie who prompts Gwen to go sort of deeper into Torchwood, which is, noteworthy for later. And the kind of scenes, the scenes that you already alluded to, have kind of straight into from the Weevil's eye view to Gwen's is very like Hannibal Lecter, but it's also a brilliantly directed scene. Whoever decided to do that and the mirroring of it.
I also just generally love how sharp Gwen is in this, like with her dialogue with Jack, the fact that she cottons on, like, why are you letting me see all this, because I shouldn't know, so you're probably just going to kill me. Like, I kind of like the fact that she's kind of on the ball with that. It's just a nice part of her character.
I think that's true of her character in a lot of places, but absolutely. And then, just Jack kind of leaning into the magic of the world, I think, for the audience and for Gwen, feeding into the whole POV character. So sort of revealing the magic entrance and the sort of, what I've described as the tinkly magic of the music sort of tries to make you feel of the awe of it all. But then I will throw to you, Andrew, because that's when they describe this perception filter that they're using as their magic door. So go ahead.
I really like the fact that they hint that the perception filter on the peering slab comes from the fact that the TARDIS landed there in Boomtown. That's just a really nice callback to an already established episode. That kind of just helps set it up a little bit more.
And they make that connection without being really like overt about it.
Yeah,
and he never says the TARDIS or anything, does he? He says something like, "Oh, a dimensionally transcendental ship" or whatever,
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think the way that it's done is great writing, because he says something along the lines of, "Oh, if I had to guess, I'd say something with a dimensionally transcendental chameleon circuit grafted its properties onto this spot after landing in this exact spot, but otherwise, just disregard all that, just say magic door, it sounds cooler." So you have the nerd explanation for those who are kind of like pushing up their specs wanting it, and also if you don't know anything about Doctor Who, you're just like, yeah, magic door. Then you get into the references to kind of the Christmas invasion and Army of Ghosts, and how people are still deluded enough to think that, there's still such thing as aliens, which I think was a fault in the Russell T Davies era that started to really jar, and which at least Moffat addressed with the whole, like, the cracks in time took people's memories or whatever.
Yeah.
Then the next scene I didn't love, because it's very much just two faces doing two shots in a bar. It's just like your average TV show. But I also appreciate it's basically your exposition dump scene with Jack taking Gwen and the audience through stuff. So it's kind of fine.
And then Jack decides to be really manipulative and drug her, so...
Yeah.
Very...
yeah.
I think it was Adam that hinted it was very kind of Seventh Doctor-y almost of the way Jack acts here.
Yeah, I'd say throughout the whole thing, because let's face it, like, since this is Torchwood, like, Jack is the principal character. He's like the doctor of this show. And I really think this episode, and I'm noticing it a bit, not as much as this first one as I'm going through series one, but it really feels more like the doctor in this, because, obviously he has to do the exposition to begin with. He has to pull a lot of the strings, but I try and see it as it's just another facet to Captain Jack, because I think I mentioned it last time. When he's in Doctor Who, he always just seems he's like the confident, occasionally funny side character, not in like a bad way, but that feels like that's the purpose he serves when he's in Doctor Who. Whereas in Torchwood, he's allowed to expand and be more than that, which is so crucial, because if he'd have just been exactly the same as he was in Doctor Who, then I'd argue this show could have fallen flat on its face. So it's nice that he's got this room to show maybe more darker, not more sinister, but as I say, more manipulative, more like Seventh Doctor-esque moments of his personality, and I really like that.
Yeah. I did want to get into something next, but before we do that, I will hopefully remember this time to say that just to give sort of a content warning / trigger warning for everybody, we are going to kind of discuss the things that come up with the Torchwood team, and specifically with Owen and his kind of stealing of alien tech. So we are dealing with what it's metaphorical, but what we kind of very much, I think, regard as being effectively kind of a roofie and a date rape type scene. So if you're uncomfortable with that kind of thing, maybe just skip ahead by, let's say, 10 minutes, and you can be sure we're not talking about it anymore, but otherwise just sort of be aware we're very sensitive to this kind of thing. All of us are disgusted by it, despite the kind of metaphorical quote that's put on it, and every one of us has come down against this in discussions previously, but we are going to have to kind of mention it in terms of the episode. So I will say that, moving swiftly along. Related to that, I think the thing that I liked about this next scene is that the idea of saying that nobody can take alien tech off the base, and then the reveal that everybody has, I think basically lets you introduce who all of these characters are perfectly.
Yes.
So you get you get the fact that Susie's obsessed with death and she's resurrecting flies, and that's all she does. And the idea that Tosh is kind of the bookish bookworm type that's scanning books to sort of to be able to sort of disseminate the information quicker and stuff. And then, as I say, Owen very irresponsibly is kind of like, oh, I have this effectively alien date rape drug and I can make myself irresistible to a woman who may not be interested. But again, I don't like that the episode plays that and then also plays the idea of her boyfriend kind of being mad, and then eventually, you know, he gets kind of roofied, I guess, as well. And it's played very much for laughs of like, this couple, it's going to be a threesome. And first of all, I don't like that that's the introduction to your LGBT rep. I think that's kind of horrific.
As a member of that community, rewatching this, because I'd forgotten that scene happened. When I rewatched this, I was a little bit uncomfortable. I was very surprised that, of all people, Russell T Davies would write that.
Yeah, I don't think it would exist today in the same form.
No.
But I'm thinking it's excusable in any way, but I do find it weird that it sort of, A, that Russell T Davies wrote it, and B, that it was sort of able to air without any sort of issue with it.
Yes.
But yeah, I think, as I said, the idea, maybe it's just me, but I think we kind of all agreed that it almost tries to play this for the laughs, and I just think that's...
Yeah, and it's not a good idea to do that.
Yeah, misstep, I think, yeah. Go ahead.
I also, whilst this is definitely minor in comparison to the fact that, you know, this scene does happen, I do feel like it also adds to the whole discussion we were having of it's trying too hard to show that it's adult. It was like, first episode, we're trying to be adult. Oh, we need to, like, put some sex references in here. Oh, look, these people are going to go and have sex. And it's like, one, you don't need to do that. We've already got that this is an adult show. Two, if you were going to do that, why would you do it this way?
Yeah.
It's very uncomfortable to watch.
I don't know if there's any other way you could do it whilst keeping with what you're trying to do in this scene, which is show, like, Owen being irresponsible. But I think there's got to be a better way than this. And
yeah.
Related to that, even though it's a jump ahead, because then we can stop talking about this, is that when kind of Jack punishes them all and they've got to hand their stuff in when the plot is revealed, I do think you needed more of punishment for Owen. The idea that it's comparable that what Toshiko did.
Because he's...
I'm just going to drop a message. But what he was basically saying was the fact that Tosh and Owen get the same punishment despite what they do, the things that they did being very different. Like, all Tosh was doing was reading data, like reading books with this machine and then scanning them in and like finding like quicker ways to decipher it or whatever. Whereas what Owen did was disgusting and would definitely be punishable by law. Otherwise, though, yeah.
I think just to weigh my 2 cents in whilst Mike comes back is, like, I don't think... Oh, he's come back. Can you hear us, Mike?
Hello, yeah, sorry, I realised that dropped straight out. Sorry about that.
It's all right, don't
hello.
worry. Just to give my 2 cents on the whole situation with Owen, like, I think, yes, if you wrote that scene now as was and put it in like a script thing, that'd be thrown out completely. I do think it sadly was a case of, like so many things in TV, of nowhere near saying it was okay. It's never okay. But I think it was a different culture in TV 15 years ago. I think we can agree on that in terms of what was... could be played off for laughs. But yes, sort of agreeing with Andrew, the fact that Owen is dealt sort of the same consequences as Tosh, despite the two things being miles apart, is a bit misguided. Hindsight.
Yeah, and I will say, just to kind of cut a slight bit of slack to RTD, I think it's ignorance rather than maliciousness in his case.
I'd agree with that.
It doesn't excuse it, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, I don't think he knew or kind of registered that fact. And I was just discussing it with Will, my host, the other day, and said, I'd love to interview Russell T Davies specifically about this and just say, have you watched it back and how do you feel about it now? Because at least, thankfully, we seem to have developed as a species, I think, in the sort of last 15 years or so.
I think he definitely did improve on that sort of thing as well, because I don't know if either of you ever watched, he did sort of not a 3-part. It was like 3 shows that all told the same story a few years ago on Channel 4. It was Cucumber, Banana, and Tofu, I think they were called.
Yeah, they were.
They were really good, but I'm sure he touched on a similar sort of subject in one of those episodes, and he handled it way better than he does here.
Fair enough.
So I'm kind of curious where his mind was when he wrote this bit. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah. I'm aware that we're going to probably have to lose you, Adam, in a few minutes.
Yes, I was thinking if it's easier, without spoiling anything, because I'll let you guys, I could give you like a very vague general thoughts on like the conclusion of the story.
I was just going to say, do you want to just whiz through your thoughts and then we can sort of jump back, myself and Andrew, because we can stick around.
Sure.
So,
I mean, my main thoughts that I think people would be curious to hear is mainly concerning the final scene, which again, I'll let you guys go into that more in depth. And so, but just bear my thoughts in mind when you get there, listeners. I'll say is a very good scene. It's very well written. It's very well acted. The pacing of it, the atmosphere, the camera shots, everything. It's one of the, best scenes in that episode. Absolutely. What I will say is you will get the most, in my opinion, you'll get the most impact, and stuff out of it if you have no idea about Captain Jack and you've never seen Torchwood at all. I would argue in that scenario, or like I believe in your case, Mike, when you watched it live at the time, that will produce the most power in that scene. Having said that, even if you do know about Captain Jack and you've watched a bit of Torchwood like I did before this one, it's still a very good scene. I just think it loses some of that surprise impact. But you could say that about any TV that goes for that, really. Sort of a you had to be there moment. But yeah, it's a very good scene, and the way it ends, sort of establishing Gwen as part of the team. Is it rushed? Kind of. Do they need to be stood on the top of the Millennium Center? No. Just going back to you can tell I really don't like those two shots.
End,
Can we please title this episode, Why Are They Standing on Roofs?
Or we could just call it Welsh Batman.
Welsh Batman, yeah, fine. But it is a bit rushed, but I think my main takeaway was, having never seen this pilot episode before, did the credits roll and I asked myself, do I want to see more? And the answer is yes. I feel for what it needed to do, it set itself up pretty well to go on. And in terms of a rating, I'd give it a very strong 8 out of 10.
Awesome. I was just going to say, so that was your conclusion and your score, which will make a note.
Pretty much, yeah. As I say, I want you guys to, fully go into the final scene. I didn't want to sort of spoil it here and then backtrack it. But those were, as I say, for anyone listening, just bear those thoughts in mind when the guys get there. But again, really sorry I've got a dash. But thank you so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
You're welcome. It's been very nice having you.
Sorry we weren't able to condense it into enough time to have you to talk, but
no, don't worry.
If you have any notes or thoughts on the last scene, if you wanted to publish them, we've got our own sort of website, or if you want to put a video on your own YouTube or whatever, then by all means. I don't want to feel like it's completely cut off and you couldn't comment on it. So
no, absolutely. I'll keep that in mind. But as I say, thanks for having me on. And if you ever need people back another time, I'd be more than happy to come back on. It's been a joy.
Well, if I can get these recording devices working, just to give the listener a slight preview, I'm hoping we can get something up so that we can record a K9 and Company review.
Hey.
The holiday period break, because after seeing your Dimensions in Time thoughts, I really have to watch something that's maybe regarded as terrible but is still fun. So there we go. Thank you very much for joining us. Take care. Enjoy your dinner that you're off to cook. And,
yes, chef.
Hopefully we'll see you again.
Also, I hope your show goes really well.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Christmas show starts soon, so hopefully that'll go well. But thank you very much, guys. Cheers for having me on. I'll catch you later.
Bye.
Bye. Right, well, we're not going anywhere, listener. We have lost Adam Martin, who, again, thanks again to Adam for joining us. He's a great voice in the Who community. Follow his YouTube channel and all of his projects. Believe me, they're worth it. We will hopefully not be much longer, but myself and Andrew, if you're happy to stick around, Andy, we'll carry on.
Yep, I'll happy to.
Well, I don't have much more. It's really just a deep dive in. A couple of things that I did have issue with was, again, it's perhaps petty, but the idea of Gwen being retconned, as they call it. Well, first of all, it's good that they use something that me as a comic book nerd is familiar with, the idea of retcon, and just give it that name to sort of point out, they're just going to forget and it'll not be important anymore.
Yeah, it's nice that they name it like that, because it's an easy way to explain what it is without needing to explain it, if that makes sense.
I agree. That's basically what I was trying to say, but I was less clear about it. But yeah, 100%. But whilst I love that Eve Miles plays the sort of frustrated devastation when she's trying to write this all down or type this all out and whatnot, and we as the audience feel as we watch Ianto delete it, I just was left wondering the entire time, love, why didn't you just use a pen and paper?
Yeah, especially when it's like a scene later and we see that she's written "remember" on a flyer. It's like, why didn't you just do that? Why did you not just write it down in pen and paper while you could, and then it wasn't going to get deleted?
Yeah, and because of the nature of the way it is, like in linear terms, it means that she must have come home, looked at the Millennium Center brochure, written "remember," and instead of carry on writing, went, I know, I'll go to the computer and type for the rest. It's just so, like, I mean, it's perhaps churlish, but it's worth mentioning. It doesn't hold up to much scrutiny.
Yeah, agreed.
I do love, and I think you agreed with me last time, the idea of like Gwen's normal routine and the dullness of it being, normal, but then the directorial touch of it triggering her memory when she sees the knife and flashes of that kind of reminding stuff.
I really like the fact that they kind of set up her remembering by earlier in the episode having her team investigating the murders with this special knife, and that being the thing that helps her remember. I think that's really nicely set up, because it always bugs me in TV shows and films when something, for lack of a better word, something that shouldn't happen happens, but the reason for it happening wasn't set up beforehand, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's probably you that mentioned it last time, but I like that it's not an immediate sort of switch, that she sees the knife and it triggers something, but it's not like, now I remember everything. It kind of takes the last scene and the trauma of like what's going on before everything really does click back.
Yeah, she's like got this whole pretty much throughout until the very end. For the rest of the episode, she just
Hello.
Hello.
How's it going? We are, but we've lost Adam. But we're gonna be here like 20 minutes, maybe tops. We're just finishing off. See you in a bit.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you can join us if you want to. Okay, no worries. No worries. See you in a bit. Bye bye. Yeah, cameo by Will.
Oh, Dad, come back.
Where were we? So yeah, seeing like the knife and everything, and it would have probably triggered me to remember something, because it did. It reminded me of the Klingon knife that was clearly ripping off, because I'm a Trekkie. But
I mentioned this later on anyway. I did actually have a note earlier saying that I just really love Eve Miles throughout this entire episode. I really enjoy her performance. Yeah. There's many moments where I just really, really enjoy her performance, such as when Reese is cooking her dinner earlier in the episode and she's just sort of sat staring and sort of really zoning out. You can read a lot on her face despite the fact that she's not saying anything. But anyway, I like the fact that the gradual remembering gets this performance out of her, because as we'll get to when it comes to the confrontation scene, she clearly knows that she should know something but can't remember what it is. So she's very confused and very panicked, and that sort of adds to the scene. I think I really enjoyed Eve's. And Indira as well coming up.
Yeah, I will say that. I'll say quickly, first of all, yes, Eve, if she was a lesser actress, then the whole show falls apart, because, as I said, yes, Jack's kind of the hero, the Doctor figure, all these evil plans kind of thing, because I liked it better when she was very much like, I've just gotten in too deep and I'm desperate, and out for me is death, basically,
Yeah, I agree. I don't remember they keep killing Susie that well, but I remember when I first saw it thinking it kind of undermined the end of this episode, which I think is really good. And I do like the fact that even though she essentially is the villain of the episode, I like the fact that she's not really a bad person either. She just like developed an unhealthy obsession and kind of fell too far into it, and then sort of realized that she didn't really have a way out of it, because she's killed 3 people now. I really like the way that, and yeah, like you said, the way that Indira plays this is very, very well done. I did find myself feeling sorry for her as the scene went on. Even when, again, the moment I mentioned last time with Eve, when I love the fact that it's kind of true to the character that when Gwen thinks she's about to be shot, she doesn't try to run, and even though she is kind of pleading for her life, she kind of stops and accepts the fact that she's about to die, but then just covers her eyes so she can't see it. And I don't know, I really like that, and I think Eve's performance here is phenomenal. Both of them. This is
Yeah.
In terms of the acting, this sort of back and forth between Susie and Gwen is definitely the best part of the episode.
Yeah, and I think again I have to give a shout out to that acting, because again it could have so easily gone wrong when Gwen's purpose in the episode is very much, she's got to be the hard ass and show that she'll stand for no crap, and oh yeah, you're not parking it there, get lost, I'm the police or whatever. And then in this scene when she kind of is at her worst, to be vulnerable enough to just break down, like I said, drop to her knees and just kind of, oh crap, I'm gonna die, and sort of lean into that via an acting sort of decision, I think shows how good she is, because you never think like, oh, what's happened to your love? You're just kind of like, yep, I would probably do the same.
I think it kind of works in as well, and this is another reason I love this part, is the fact that it works into what we have seen happen to her character, because at the same time as, being threatened with a gun and about to be shot, she knows that there's something that she's forgetting that she needs to remember, and she's just really confused, and I think that adds to it as well, because she knows, I'm pretty sure she says it in the episode, she knows that she knows Susie, but she doesn't know where from. And I like that, and like the confusion all sort of adds up to this breakdown, and it's very, very good acting, but on Eve's part. And again, as we already said, India is also phenomenal in this scene. I love the part where she like fumbles through her handbag to try and find the gun, and you kind of see that she's not really prepared for this. She's not intending on killing Gwen, but she kind of feels like she has to.
Yeah, and like I said, she's out of options. I think I prefer the options left, as opposed to the later reveal that, like, haha, I knew I'd come back and be resurrected and stuff, which kind of cheapens it. But
I agree.
Even down to kind of like giving her the motivation, which is actually, I mean, when you look at it, yes, it's terrible how she did it, but it's kind of noble, the idea of like, look, I just want to try and find a way to cheat death, to solve death, for everybody, for the whole of mankind. And yeah, it's bad that it's an obsession, but it's a way more noble thing than just, I just enjoyed killing, or I wanted to wipe out a particular group of people.
Yeah, you can definitely tell from this scene that she wasn't happy about killing those people. One thing I forgot to mention, I've just realised I forgot, one part of, this is for the editing, that I particularly wasn't keen on, other people might disagree. I didn't like the fact that when Gwen was remembering, we got like 20 shots of this knife being worked on. It just the constant back and forth between Gwen walking and then this knife was just very, very off-putting. It actually got quite irritating by the end. I was like, look, we get it, she recognizes the knife, can we move on now?
I agree, and I think it detracts from a good bit of direction, which is the reveal of Susie from the shadows, because again, watching it for the first time with the idea, obviously it's, if you know Torchwood and you're going back after watching more, Susie's not in the other episodes, but watching it for the first time and knowing she's kind of main cast and she's one of the team, that big reveal hit me like as it should, kind of like the shadows revealing who it was an actual like gasp moment, and because it's intercut with all this sort of flashing of Gwen's memory, it distracts from that, when I think that's more than strong enough to stand on its own. And related to that, I think another sort of shout out to the writing and direction. Again, I can only speak from the point of view of coming to it because I watched it literally as it went out, and so at the time I knew nothing. So I thought it was super clever, first of all, that it had already it had introduced the Chekhov's gun, as they call it, of the perception filter with the little lift. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this. If you're not, sorry, quick nerdy deep dive. It's a theory that basically says Chekhov's gun is the idea, if you introduce a gun in the first act of something, it has to go off in the third act.
Yes.
So perhaps the most famous modern example of that is Shaun of the Dead, where very much it's in your face of like, oh, is that a real rifle? The pub's called the Winchester. Then in the third act it is, and that's what they use to fight the zombies, because they've introduced it. So I think it was. I remember thinking at the time it's super clever that Jack, and I was like, oh crap, they can't see it. It's even cleverer that it then completely subverts that Susie, with the line, the perception filter won't work on me, and it's then even more shocking from a sort of first time perspective when she shoots Jack in the head, and you're like, shit, there's no coming back from that. Jack's dead. What the heck? What's going on here? So I think that shock value might be lost if you weren't watching it for the first time live. But
again, I'm in the same camp as Adam, where I first watched Torchwood back in 2014. I'd seen Children of Earth when it aired, and obviously I'd also seen Doctor Who season 3 by this point. So I knew about Jack's, spoiler alert, I knew about Jack's immortality already when I watched it, but I can imagine watching it without any knowledge of that would have been like quite the shock.
it was, yeah, very much so. I mean, we hadn't really had much explained about, which we didn't get so much later, where Jack came from and how he's coming into this, but we didn't know about the immortality thing for sure. So that was a shock, and then when he comes back, it's even more shocking. But then it's also clever writing, I think, that it ties it into Parting of the Ways, and it specifically kind of references that. It doesn't it doesn't get bogged down by it for new viewers, so it's not like, well, there's these things called Daleks and this guy called the Doctor, and it's very much just like a long time ago I did die, then something happened to me, I came back, now I can't die, one day I'll find the right kind of Doctor. That's all you need. It's perfectly the right level of geeky enough.
Yeah, I'd agree. It very perfectly alludes to Parting of the Ways as well. It's not blatantly saying, oh yeah, I got shot by a Dalek. There was this woman called Rose. She took in the time vortex and brought me back to life. It cleverly doesn't go into all that. It gives you enough detail without... it gives you enough detail without needing to over-explain.
Yeah, so my very last note is just that, again, the film nerd in me noticed that when Jack's kind of putting away the resurrection glove, it's very much a Raiders of the Lost Ark type ending, you know, the archive of all the things that should never be touched, and yet it's in this sinister room. And so, yeah, that was my last note, so I will throw it to you and ask if you've got any more, then we'll give the conclusion.
I was also going to say I quite like the fact that, I don't think I said this last time, but I've remembered it, is I'm pretty sure we get a scene after Susie's suicide, which is very sad, by the way. That's a sad moment where you kind of see the desperation, and she just kind of realizes that it's the only... I say this, she feels like it's the only way out, and then she shoots herself in the head, which is one, quite shocking. I remember the first time I watched it, even though I knew about Jack's immortality, I was very surprised when she just shot herself in the head.
Well, it's not even to the head, like to the temple. It's literally up through the bottom.
Yeah, up through the throat. This is an example of Torchwood, setting its adult tone without feeling in your face, if that makes sense. So obviously, this is not something you would get in Doctor Who at all, but it also kind of...
I think I counted that last time with saying it was maybe a hint of things to come, because although you don't see as much, it reminded me a lot of what happens with Adelaide in the Waters of Mars.
Yes, you do get Waters of Mars, I guess. But you don't physically see it happen.
Yeah, Torchwood makes better use of the fact that it's adult to show you more, to get that visceral reaction from you that you wouldn't get.
In this instance, you don't even pull away and just watch Gwen's reaction. You literally see her put the gun to her chin and pull it.
You see the flash and everything. Yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah. It is very horrible, but it's kind of fitting with Torchwood's aesthetic and tone that it doesn't pull away, and it does just blatantly show you someone shooting themselves. And weirdly, unlike the blood earlier and the trademark obligatory sex reference, it felt more... Subtle is not the right word at all, because it is very much in your face, but it didn't feel like it was trying to cram down your throat. This is an adult show. It felt in line with the scene, I guess.
I think, I don't want to speak for you, but I think the point is that basically it uses the fact that it's an adult show to further the story, rather than just shoving something that has nothing to do with the story to point out that you're an adult show.
Yes.
It furthers the plot in no way that guy at the start goes, oh, there's no fucking procedure. You could have lost that and lose nothing. Whereas this is using the fact that you can show something more viscerally to aid the story you're telling. So I think
exactly.
That's where they get it right, exactly. Yeah.
This is definitely the best example in the first episode of Torchwood showing that it's an adult show.
Yeah, and
I think is what I'm trying to get to. Yes.
Yeah, completely. We've got your stories to get to, so we'll quickly move on and say, if you want to give your conclusion and your score, then I'll do the same.
Yep. So, let me just flip my page. Overall, I said The performances overall were pretty good across the board, but especially from Eve and Indira. Murray Gold's score is quite subdued and atmospheric, which is a bit different than I'm used to with him in Doctor Who, but the music where Gwen enters the Torchwood base is beautiful and kind of reminds me a little bit of, if you remember, do you remember the main suite of Silence in the Library?
Yeah, I do actually.
It kind of reminds me of that a little bit in the way that it works anyway. Obviously, it's a different piece of music, but the feeling that it gives me is very similar.
I think that's deliberate.
Yeah, I put the direction for the most part is pretty good. Granted, I'm not an expert on that, but the one moment I mentioned of the scene in the bed was notable for me. I liked that. The special effects were fine for the time. Blood splat could have been a bit more realistic, but the prosthetics for the Weevil were phenomenal. A really good practical effect, and the writing felt pretty strong throughout the whole thing, apart from a few bits and bobs that could have been altered. And it was a very, very RTD feeling story. Like you could go into this blind without knowing that he'd written it if you'd seen his work before, and know that Russell T Davies wrote this.
Yeah, I agree completely.
And I was between a 7 and an 8, so I gave it a 7.5 out of 10.
Which makes sense. That's cool. And just to give my own quick thoughts then, and to conclude things, I said deftly handled plot and brilliantly written dialogue serve to introduce the whole overall world of this show. Along the way, it establishes ties to canon, introduces characters, theme, and tone, but still has time for a first kind of procedural plot and to serve as a point of view pilot through Gwen, much as we'd seen with Rose and other RTD stuff. Unfortunately, it lapses into being dark just for the sake of it a few times for me. And tries a bit too hard to establish itself as grown-up, so it goes over the top, maybe once or twice at least. There's also some minor plot holes or conveniences and some really poor examples of morality, particularly relating to Owen. The music is distractingly bombastic sometimes for me, which I think kind of hurts the tone and kind of makes you feel aware that you're being manipulated.
I remember last time you mentioned the scene where Gwen's trying to run back to her house in time before she forgets everything. You mentioned that as a particular moment where the music just kind of grated on you a bit.
It's not so much of the grade, it's that I don't like when you're aware the music's trying to make you feel something, and in that scene it's very much like, this is every second time, you must panic, and it's like, yeah, we get that from the acting and the dialogue, we don't really need the music to point this out, but this is just me, some people like that kind of thing, so yeah, regardless, I would say the whole thing unfortunately hasn't aged particularly well, but I think Doctor Who has aged better, the parent show, but the acting is universally outstanding, and the lines and the ideas stick with you. The last scene is absolutely pitch perfect, just sci-fi drama. It's just a shame that it kills off the show's best actress, but that basically puts it up a full point from what I would have originally said just for that last scene. And the score I went with was 7 out of 10, which, as I said, gives us a pretty easy average, as I mentioned last time, because we've got 7, 7.5 and 8, which means the average score and the final tally for the leaderboard will be 7.5 out of 10 for Torchwood's
Which
first
means
episode.
that I am correct.
Which basically confirms you as correct. So yeah, we've...
Sorry, I'm just been a knob.
Just feel smug for a second, yeah. So, we've got about 7 minutes before we hit the 2-hour mark, so just as a treat for everyone that stuck around this long, I did promise Andrew we'd get a chance, and believe me, these are such cool stories. We've been dealing with Torchwood, and Andrew's mentioned a couple of convention appearances by Torchwood actors, and some stories he's got, so without further ado, Andrew, tell us your Torchwood stories.
I'll blast through my 3 Torchwood cast stories as quick as I can. So, my first convention was in August 2014 because my still current partner, Phil, took me just after I turned 18 to Sheffield Comic Con. And at Sheffield Comic Con in 2014 were Bern Gorman and Eve Miles, who play Owen and Gwen in Torchwood. And on the Saturday, we didn't really get to see them. Maybe they weren't there. I think they might have only been there for the Sunday. I can't fully remember. But there was a reason why I didn't see them on the Saturday, because we went both days. Anyway. So, The first story I have is related to meeting Byrne for the first time. So I went up and with the people who went to the convention with me were my partner Phil, one of my best friends, and my sister. So we went up to his table because I'd been rewatching Torchwood as of this convention. I think we'd just finished season 2, and I'd already seen Children of Earth, so I'd seen like the first 3 seasons of Torchwood by this point. So I really wanted to meet even Byrne. So I went up to Byrne's table, and my sister was just ahead of me. So she was hadn't really seen much of Torchwood, and I don't think she has still. But she still wanted his autograph because she was like, "Oh, cool! You're in a show that my brother likes." So she was asking him about his character, and he was kind of struggling to explain Owen as a character. He was trying to explain, like, I'm not a villain, but I'm also like, I'm not really a good person, blah blah. And I did it. This is probably going to sound rude, but it wasn't meant to. Because I was aware that there was a queue behind us, I just said to my sister, he's not a bad guy, he's just a bit of a dick. And Byrne Gorman loved this and went, right, that's it, I'm signing your photo like that. So I still have the autograph in my bedroom in a folder, and the autograph, it's a picture of Owen in front of the Millennium Building, and it just says, to Andrew, I'm not a bad guy, I'm just a bit of a dick. Love from Byrne Gorman / Owen Harper.
That's awesome.
That's cool.
That's awesome. I'll just throw that challenge out there that if anybody there's got their own like Torchwood wiki or whatever and they need a very quick character description, just please put that down under Dr. Owen Harper. Just put not a bad guy but a bit of a dick, because that's just quality. Go ahead, Andrew. Sorry.
Second story. So the same day, so on the Sunday, I'd met both Eve and Byrne by this point. Both were lovely. Eve especially. Oh, I love Eve Miles so much. We went to the Torchwood talk that happened that day, and there was like a Q&A session as part of it. And one of the kids, no, it would have been like a young teen, asked them what sort of pranks they pulled, because I think it's pretty well known in the Doctor Who community that the Torchwood cast like to pull pranks on the Doctor Who cast because they filmed a lot of the stuff at the same time. And I know they told one story about when they filled like shopping bags with like vegetables and stuff and just lobbed them at the TARDIS set, I think was one of the stories they did. And then Byrne went to tell a story that about something John Barrowman did, and Eve had to stop him and say, no, there's kids here, we can't tell this story. And me, being 18 and now very intrigued, as soon as the talk was over, I like sort of hung around the area where they were going to be with my sister, my boyfriend, and my friend, waiting for them to come back, and I immediately went to Byrne's table and went, so what was this story that you were going to mention, that this prank that John liked to pull? Because I'm 18, I'm old enough to hear this. And he sort of leaned forward to see who was around, and then sort of pulled the 4 of us into a huddle with him. So we you know, like in a TV show when characters like huddled together, and like the camera angle would be from below, so you just see their heads pressed together as they're like discussing a plan. It was literally like that around his table. Just a language warning here. I'll try and filter it as best I can, but it's quite explicit. Byrne, like, he pulled us into this huddle and went, okay, the first thing you need to know is that John Barrowman has the biggest effing knob you will ever see in your life. We were all like, oh, okay, this is where we're going, okay. Wasn't expecting this. And apparently what he used to do is take his tackle out and likes to put it in or on props, which I don't really know how I feel about someone doing that as a prank. It feels
just
a little
before
bit
before you go further, I will point out it's not like it sounds worse than it is. It's not a question of like putting it in and then having somebody like reaching into the bag of popcorn. What he did was sort of touch something with his privates, and then wait until somebody else had to handle that prop, and then sort of take them a photograph of like, look what's just been on that, which I think is slightly less in your face.
It's slightly less creepy than I just made it out to me, and I did forget to mention that he did it, took a photo, and then put it back. Like, he didn't like make them touch it. That's just no.
Yeah.
He's not Owen. But anyway, we found this very funny, and we went straight over to Eve's table because my partner hadn't yet got her autograph yet because he wasn't with me when I went and got her. So we went back over to Eve's table so that he could get her autograph. And we asked her about it. So we went up to a table and I said, "Oh yeah, Brian's just told us this story that John Barrowman used to do on set, the one that you couldn't say because the kids were there. Is it true that he used to get his bits out and put it on the props? And is it as big as Byrne says it is?" And she said, and I quote, "One of the best things that I've heard anyone say, and it will remain with me till the day I die, in the Welshest accent you can imagine, when, oh my God, it's ungodly." It was, phenomenal. I love that woman so much. I love Eve Miles so much. But anyway, that leads on to the third story I have, and the final one, this was about 7 months later, so this would have been March 2015. Phil and I are celebrating 1 year of being together, and it just so happened that the day that our, I guess, anniversary falls on was also the day that a Nottingham convention was happening. So we booked tickets to go, and we went. I was dressed as Ash, he from Pokemon, and he was dressed as Tuxedo Mask. Lovely day, and while we were there, we saw that Eve Miles was going to be there, and Phil really wanted to meet her again because he hadn't had a chance to get a photo with her like I had at the Sheffield convention. So we went up to a table, we queued for about 25 minutes or so to see her. Her queue was quite long, and we got to the end of the queue, and she saw us, and we said hi, as you do, and she sort of took a moment to look at us, and then her eyes lit up, and she went, "Oh, hello again, you two, how are you doing?" It turned out after like 7 months, but this is from like August to March, she completely recognised us, and she remembered stuff that we'd spoken about back then. So like, she asked me how my sister was doing, who wasn't even with us at this point. She asked me how university was going, because she remembered that I'd said I was moving for university, because that was happening like a month after the Sheffield convention. And then she asked how our relationship was going, because she remembered that we were together, and we mentioned that it was our year anniversary, and she was really chuffed for us. So she had like a big hug with us. We got photos with her. We spent, and I feel kind of bad now for the people who were behind us, but we spent a good 20 minutes talking to her, because she was. This was around the time that Series 2 of Broadchurch had just finished as well, so I was asking her questions about that because I'd watched it, and she told me a really fun story about how her husband kept trying to ask her before the episode aired, like, "Oh, did your character do it? Did you kill those kids?" And she'd just keep turning around and going, "Shut the F up and just watch it, will you?" But yeah, I love that woman. She's brilliant. But yeah, there's my Torchwood stories.
Awesome. Well, that's a good bit of bonus for all you listeners. You can't say you didn't get value. We've talked news, hit or miss, episode review, and those bonus stories, which
and John Barrett and Snob.
And, indeed, we'll wait and see if Will keeps those in or edits them out.
I will say that is why Eve Miles is my favourite person I've ever met at a convention. The fact that she remembered us after all that time, she's phenomenal.
She sounds lovely, and it's always good to hear that about people that you've loved their work and their acting. So, that's going to wrap things up. We're just over 2 hours, so I think that's probably enough now from all of us. Once again, thanks to Adam Martin for coming on. Sorry he had to leave us a bit early. Thank you, Andy, for stepping in. Thanks, Andy, for stepping in as co-host again when Will was otherwise occupied, even though he technically wasn't. But you know, we will be back. We will be back with more Hit or Miss podcast next week when we will be reviewing something you'll enjoy, something that's a bit high class, shall we say, and we'll leave it at that for the little hint. So until next time, again, thanks everyone.
I wonder what it could be. My head is scratching.